Imagine a ship, fully stocked, seaworthy, sails set, just empty. No sign of struggle, no distress call, just a complete vanishing act of everyone aboard. It sounds like something out of a chilling movie, doesn't it? Yet this isn't fiction. This is the core of the Mary Celeste mystery, arguably the ultimate ghost ship tale. A story that has, well, captivated imaginations and haunted maritime history for over a century and a half. Today we're embarking on a unique mission with this deep dive. We're going to try and unravel the true facts, confront the popular fictions that have sort of grown around it like barnacles on a hull,
Good analogy.
and explore the most compelling theories. Our goal is to provide you with a definitive understanding, whether you've known this tale your whole life, maybe from childhood stories or, old books, or perhaps you're encountering it for the very first time. We've poured over a rich stack of articles and historical analyses that will guide our journey, making sure we get to the heart of what actually happened.
What's truly compelling here, I think, is the sheer contradiction. You've got a perfectly capable vessel found utterly deserted. This isn't just a ship lost at sea, battered by storms or slowly sinking. That happens.
Right.
This is a profound human mystery. It compels us to ask why a perfectly good ship would be abandoned so hastily, and that's precisely why it continues to resonate so deeply, tapping into our innate curiosity. So we're going to start with the bare, unsettling facts of the discovery. Then we'll delve into the initial investigations that, frankly, muddied the waters quite a bit.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
After that, we'll dissect the most plausible theories, the ones that really stand up to scrutiny. And finally, we'll look at how this story became such a cultural phenomenon, often distorted by fiction, creating the very ghost ship myth we're so familiar with today.
Okay, so our journey into this enigma truly begins with the cold, hard facts of the discovery. Because that's where the real paradox lies, isn't it? Picture this. December 5th, 1872. The American brigantine Mary Celeste, that's a two-masted vessel, square rigging on the foremast, fore and aft sails on the mainmast, known for being pretty fast and versatile back then.
A common workhorse of the era, yeah.
Exactly. And she was found abandoned, adrift, approximately 400 nautical miles. What's that, about 740 kilometers from the Azores? Those Portuguese islands way out in the Atlantic. The ship that found her was the British brig De Gracia. Similar type of ship, but British, commanded by Captain David Morehouse. And this wasn't just some random encounter at sea. Morehouse recognized the Mary Celeste immediately. He actually knew her captain, Benjamin Briggs.
Which is quite a coincidence.
A huge coincidence. Both ships had departed from New York just days apart, heading in basically the same direction. It's one of those twists of fate that just deepens the whole mystery. So Morehouse sees the Mary Celeste sailing erratically, no sign of anyone on deck. He's deeply concerned, naturally. Orders a boarding party to investigate.
And they find her essentially seaworthy, a bit disheveled, maybe some water in the hold, rigging damage, but profoundly, hauntingly empty. And when we say empty, we really mean it in the most chilling sense. The captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife, Sarah Elizabeth, their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda.
Just a toddler.
Yeah, just a toddler. And all 7 crew members, a total of 10 people gone, simply vanished. Their other son, Arthur, who was 7, mercifully stayed behind in Massachusetts for school, spared from whatever happened. What makes this discovery so incredibly unique, so unsettling, is the complete absence of the usual signs. No distress signals, no obvious violence, no evidence of theft.
Nothing seems obviously wrong enough to just abandon ship.
Exactly. She was a capable vessel, yet totally devoid of life. That's what sets it apart from typical derelicts you might find, dismasted wrecks or hulls half submerged after a terrible storm. The Mary Celeste's relatively sound condition points away from slow sinking or catastrophic storm damage. It forces us to consider some kind of perceived, sudden, maybe inexplicable event that prompted a very hasty but seemingly deliberate departure.
That fundamental paradox, that's the core of it. That's why it's not just another maritime incident, but this enduring mystery. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we have to go back to the ship's origins. The vessel that became the Mary Celeste wasn't always called that. She was originally built way back in 1861, up in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, Canada, christened the Amazon.
The Amazon.
A 282-ton brigantine, built for speed, built for cargo, typical of the maritime trade boom in the mid-19th century. But from her very first voyage, the Amazon seemed, well, unlucky is maybe putting it lightly, plagued by this unusual string of misfortunes.
Yeah, it's quite a record.
Her first captain, just days after setting sail, falls ill with pneumonia, dies. Ship has to return to port. Later, more mishaps. A collision with a fishing brig in the English Channel needs repairs. Then she runs aground in 1867 off Cape Breton Island.
These early incidents, while totally unrelated to the 1872 abandonment, they inadvertently created this public perception. The ship was seen as unlucky, maybe even cursed.
The curse narrative starts early.
It does, and this pre-existing story is crucial because it subtly predisposed people to accept more fantastical explanations later on. It sort of laid the groundwork for the mystery to really take root and flourish. It shows how historical context, even unrelated incidents, can shape how people see things, how myths can grow. Anyway, after these troubles, the Amazon was sold to an American, Richard W. Haynes, in 1868. He renamed her Mary Celeste, and then she underwent some pretty significant changes. A big renovation in 1872 cost about $10,000, a lot of money then.
$10,000, wow, what did they do?
Added a second deck, made her longer, increased her storage capacity, basically turned her into a larger, more modern vessel for the time.
So we have a ship with a bit of a checkered past, maybe, but now under new American ownership, extensively renovated, ready for a fresh start. Now let's talk about the man in command on that fateful voyage, Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. In 1872, Briggs, he's 37, American, from Marion, Massachusetts, a real seafaring town. He invests in the Mary Celeste, buys some shares, and takes command.
And he wasn't just any captain.
No, definitely not. Widely regarded as experienced, competent, fair, rational. A solid guy. Beyond his skills as a sailor, Briggs was known for being deeply religious. And importantly, he was strictly abstinent from alcohol. Never touched the stuff.
And this portrayal of Briggs, this consistent picture we have of him as this pillar of the community, it's a critical factual counterpoint to many of the early theories we'll get into.
Right, because his known character just doesn't fit with ideas like a drunken mutiny or some kind of irrational panic, does it?
Not at all. It forces investigators and us to look for external, objective explanations for why they left the ship. It shifts the focus away from, say, crew problems or the captain losing his mind, towards outside factors, environmental threats, perceived dangers. That really shapes where the plausible theories go. It's really important to understand why Captain Briggs's character is so vital here. His reputation directly contradicts those easy, simple explanations. It pushes us towards something more complex. So for this voyage, 10 people aboard in total. Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah Elizabeth, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia Matilda.
And the son Arthur, safe back home.
Right. Arthur, 7 years old, stayed in Massachusetts for school, probably saved his life. The crew was 7 men, all handpicked by Briggs. He wanted skill, reliability. You had mate Albert G. Richardson, second mate Andrew Gilling, steward and cook Edward William Head, and 4 German seamen, Volkert Lawrenson, Arian Martins, Boy Lawrenson, and Gottlieb Gondeshaw.
So not a ragtag bunch, experienced professionals.
Exactly. Capable, experienced sailors chosen by a discerning captain, which just makes their collective disappearance even more baffling.
Okay, the ill-fated journey itself. The Mary Celeste departs New York City November 7th, 1872. Destination, Genoa, Italy. Her cargo, 1,700, maybe 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, industrial alcohol, valued at about $35,000 back then, which is a pretty hefty sum.
And this detailed denatured alcohol is absolutely critical. This wasn't booze for drinking.
Right, it was for fortifying Italian wines or for industrial uses. It had additives, often methanol or something bitter, to make it completely undrinkable. Poisonous, actually.
And that was standard practice, specifically done to stop crews from dipping into the cargo on long voyages. This type of alcohol is far from a minor point. Like you said earlier, it's a game changer for so many of those early theories.
How so, exactly?
Well, the fact it was denatured, undrinkable industrial alcohol directly refutes any theory of drunken mutiny. That was a common suspicion early on, especially from certain investigators we'll talk about.
So no drunken rampage?
No. It forces us to shift focus entirely to the volatility of the alcohol, the fumes, the potential for a perceived threat from the cargo itself. That lays the groundwork for the most scientifically plausible explanations. Anyway, over the next couple of weeks, the Mary Celeste sails east, encounters some rough weather. Pretty standard for the North Atlantic in November. The very last entry in the ship's logbook is dated November 25th, 8:00 a.m. It places the ship about 6 nautical miles, 11 kilometers off the Azores.
And the log entry itself? Anything unusual?
Nothing at all. No indication of distress, no mention of problems, just a routine entry. Which, again, deepens the mystery of what happened after that point. The ship was apparently fine just 10 days before she was found abandoned.
Okay, so fast forward 10 days, December 5th, 1872. The Mary Celeste is spotted adrift by the British brig Di Gratia, Captain Morehouse. We mentioned he knew Briggs, recognized the ship.
Oh.
Very unsettling for him. He sees her sailing erratically, nobody visible. He sends over a boarding party led by his first mate, Oliver DeVoe.
Right. And DeVoe and his men climb aboard. What do they find? The ship is generally seaworthy, but there are definite signs of disarray. Some sails are set, but others are torn, in poor condition, or just missing entirely. The rigging has taken some damage.
Ropes hanging over the side.
Yeah, ropes found hanging loosely over the side, dragging in the water, including one long, strong rope that was later found to be frayed at one end. Keep that rope in mind.
Okay. Hatches.
Interesting point. The main cargo hatch was securely closed, but the forehatch and the lazarette hatch, those access points at the front and back, down to the hold or lower decks, were found open, their covers lying right beside them on the deck.
And the cargo. Alcohol barrel.
Largely intact.
Yeah.
Out of 1,701 barrels, only 9 were found empty.
Only 9. Doesn't sound like much.
But here's that crucial detail again. Those 9 empty barrels were made of porous red oak.
Ah, the porous wood.
Exactly. Red oak lets vapors escape much more readily than the white oak used for all the other full barrels. So even if liquid wasn't pouring out, alcohol vapor could have been accumulating in the hold.
Okay. What about water in the ship? Was she sinking?
There was water in the hold, yes. About 3 to 3.5 feet, maybe a meter. But for a ship that size, after crossing the Atlantic in rough weather, that amount was considered pretty normal. Not immediately alarming. It certainly wasn't sinking rapidly. They also found a makeshift sounding rod on deck, just a pole for measuring the water level. Looked like it had been used very recently.
Suggesting they were concerned about the water level, maybe?
Possibly. Or just checking it frequently. And one of the ship's pumps, used to pump water out, showed signs of trouble. It was actually found disassembled, like someone had been trying to fix it. And then there are the missing items. Critically, the ship's single lifeboat was gone.
A lifeboat's gone. Okay, that's big.
Huge. And not just the lifeboat. Captain Briggs' sextant essential for navigation, his chronometer, the super accurate clock needed for longitude.
Also essential.
Absolutely. His navigation book, the ship's official register, most of the ship's papers all gone, except, strangely, the logbook was left behind. And the binnacle, the housing for the ship's compass. It had been knocked out of place, moved from its proper position, and the glass cover was smashed.
But personal belongings were mostly untouched.
Largely, yes. Crewmen's gear, their clothes, pipes, boots, still in their quarters, suggests it wasn't ransacked by pirates or a mutinous crew looking for valuables.
And food. Water.
Plenty. The galley was well stocked, enough food and water for 6 months, so they weren't starving, didn't leave because they ran out of supplies.
Okay, so it's a mixed picture. Some order, some disorder.
Exactly. You have things like a sewing machine found upright in the captain's cabin, spare glass panes unbroken, suggesting no catastrophic capsizing or severe rolling. Furniture, even a harmonium, was in place and damaged by water. But the captain's cabin and the crew's quarters were described as disheveled and wet. The heavy cast-iron galley stove had been knocked off its supports. A large water cask on deck wasn't properly secured. So this specific combination, missing essential survival tools, lifeboat, navigation gear alongside undisturbed personal stuff, and ample provisions. It points overwhelmingly towards a deliberate but very hasty departure.
Hasty, like they had to get off now.
Precisely. It suggests they probably intended to come back, or at least reach safety nearby. Not a planned, leisurely abandonment, and definitely not a sudden capsizing where everything goes chaotic. The unanchored cask, the dislodged stove, those point towards recent rough weather, or maybe a sudden jolt, something violent that could have triggered that hasty decision.
So the Mary Celeste wasn't this pristine, perfectly calm ghost ship like in the movies.
Not at all. That's a really important myth to bust. She was seaworthy, yes, but the deck was messy, sails damaged, cabins wet, stove dislodged. The famous half-eaten meal or warm tea often mentioned.
Pure fiction.
Total fiction, never reported by the De Gracia crew. DeVoe described the captain's cabin as a thoroughly wet mess. The provisions were there, sure, but not laid out dramatically like some interrupted breakfast. That image really fueled the myths, but it's just not what they found.
Okay, so the De Gracia crew manages to sail this ghost ship, the Mary Celeste, to Gibraltar. That's like 800 miles away. Quite a feat.
It was. They split their crew, put a small prize crew on the Mary Celeste. A risky move, but they were hoping for a salvage payment.
Which is where the official investigation kicks off, right?
Yeah.
In Gibraltar. And this is where the mystery really takes root and sprouts all those myths.
Absolutely. The British authorities launched an extensive investigation, led by the Attorney General there, a man named Frederick Solly Flood.
Solly Flood. Sounds imposing.
He was. And the initial suspicions during this inquiry leaned heavily towards foul play. Mutiny, piracy, even insurance fraud.
Why fraud?
Partly because the De Gracia crew stood to gain financially from the salvage claim. In 19th century maritime law, that salvage incentive often made investigators suspicious of the salvagers themselves. It wasn't just Solly Flood being difficult. The system almost encouraged suspicion in these cases.
And Solly Flood himself, what was his take?
He was, let's say, zealous, maybe even prejudiced. He seemed convinced from the outset that a crime had been committed. He fixated on things he thought were evidence. He pointed to marks on the ship's bow, claiming they were axe cuts. He reported finding blood stains on the captain's sword and on the ship's rail.
Blood on the captain's sword. That sounds dramatic.
It does. He also used the dislodged galley stove as potential proof of a violent struggle. He strongly implied the crew got drunk on the cargo, which we know wasn't possible, murdered the Briggs family, and then fled.
But this is all debunked later.
Systematically. Expert examination showed the supposed blood wasn't human blood at all. Likely rust, maybe cargo stains, something else entirely. The cuts on the bow, old damage, or just wear and tear from the sea.
And the alcohol was undrinkable.
Exactly. That completely undercut his main theory of a drunken mutiny. But it's fascinating, isn't it? How an official investigation, which should be about finding truth, could get it so wrong initially. And the lasting impact was huge.
How so?
Even though his specific claims were eventually discredited, Solly Flood's strong early suspicions, his flawed interpretations, they profoundly shaped public perception. They cemented this idea of foul play in people's minds. The official inquiry ultimately found no actual evidence of foul play, but the damage was done. And the fact that the De Gracia crew only got a reduced salvage award.
Only a fraction of what it could have been.
Yeah, about a sixth of the ship and cargo's value. It suggested that even the authorities still felt uneasy, suspicious. That lingering doubt just fueled the public imagination even more.
It's like a classic case of how an official narrative, even if it's wrong and later corrected, can get stuck in the public consciousness, like early fake news.
Precisely. It became incredibly hard to dislodge those initial sensational ideas, even when the facts pointed elsewhere.
And there was another issue during the investigation, wasn't there? Something about the ship's position.
Yes, a significant inconsistency. The Mary Celeste's last log entry, November 25th, put her just 6 miles off the Azores. But the De Gracia found her 10 days later, on December 5th, way over 400 miles east of the Azores.
So she drifted a long way.
A very long way. Which implied the abandonment must have happened after that last log entry on the 25th, not earlier in the voyage.
So whatever happened, it happened in that 10-day window.
Exactly. That discrepancy is highly significant. It suggests a sudden, unexpected event occurred sometime between November 25th and December 5th. It helps narrow down the possibilities, pushing us towards something abrupt in that specific period. The De Gracia crew eventually got their salvage money, that reduced amount, but the whole process dragged on because of Solly Flood's suspicions.
Okay, so we've laid out the facts as best we know them. We've seen how the initial investigation kind of muddied the waters and planted some myths. Now let's dive into the theories themselves. What could have actually happened out there? Let's separate the plausible from the more imaginative. We should probably start with what most experts today consider the most compelling explanation: the panic abandonment hypothesis.
Right. This isn't one single theory, but a category. It suggests the crew had to abandon ship quickly because they believed they were in immediate grave danger, even if the ship itself wasn't actually sinking or falling apart.
A perceived threat, not necessarily a real one.
Exactly. And the leading contender within this category involves those alcohol fumes we keep coming back to, and the idea of a pressure wave explosion.
Okay, explain that connection. The 50,701 barrels of volatile industrial alcohol.
That's the key. Remember those 9 empty barrels made of porous red oak? They leaked vapor more easily. Historical analysis estimates maybe as much as 300 gallons of alcohol could have evaporated into the closed environment of the hold,
creating a potentially explosive atmosphere.
Highly explosive. And remember those open fore and lazarette hatches found by the De Gracia?
Yeah, the covers were off.
That strongly suggests the crew might have been trying to ventilate the hold. They likely smelled the fuse, knew it was dangerous, and opened the hatches to air it out. Now, this theory got a huge boost from an experiment done by Dr. Andrea Sella at University College London back in 2006.
What did Sella do?
He recreated the conditions in a model hold with paper cubes representing barrels and butane gas simulating the alcohol vapor. He ignited it. What he demonstrated was fascinating. A pressure wave type of explosion from alcohol fumes like that creates a spectacular flash of flame and a huge blast, Loud bang, adult. But crucially, it leaves no soot, no burning or scorching.
No burn marks. How?
Because the explosion consumes the oxygen so fast, it essentially snuffs itself out almost immediately. No lingering fire, no charring. It could have been triggered by something tiny, a spark from barrels rubbing together in rough seas, maybe a dropped metal tool.
Wow. Okay, so imagine that. You're on board. Suddenly there's this terrifying flash of light, a huge roar, the whole ship jolts violently, but then nothing, no fire.
Exactly. For Captain Briggs, with his wife and young daughter on board, witnessing something like that, even if the ship seemed okay afterwards, the fear of a much larger catastrophic explosion happening next would be immense.
He wouldn't risk it. He'd order everyone off immediately.
You'd have to assume so. Immediate, hasty abandonment into the lifeboat.
And that ties into the missing lifeboat and that frayed rope found dragging behind the ship.
Precisely. The theory goes. They pile into the lifeboat, maybe tie it to the Mary Celeste with that long rope, intending to keep a safe distance, wait for the fumes to clear, see if another explosion happens.
But
Then the weather worsens, or the rope simply chased through and snaps in the rough seas. The lifeboat is suddenly adrift, separated from the larger, still sailing Mary Celeste, and tragically, the lifeboat and everyone in it are lost to the ocean.
that actually fits almost all the facts, doesn't it? The haste, the missing boat, the lack of damage, the open hatches, the frayed rope.
It's currently considered the most coherent, scientifically plausible chain of events. It explains the paradox of a terrifying event with no visible signs of destruction.
Okay, what's the other main panic abandonment idea? The one about navigation.
Right. This is another strong possibility, sometimes considered alongside the explosion theory or as an alternative trigger for panic. It focuses on faulty navigation equipment and a potential misjudgment of the ship's condition. Remember, Captain Briggs's sextant, chronometer, and navigation book were all missing.
Taken with them in the lifeboat, presumably.
It's
For survival.
Exactly. That suggests they planned to navigate somewhere. Research has suggested Briggs might have been disoriented. Maybe his chronometer was faulty, which wasn't uncommon for those delicate instruments on a rough voyage.
So he might have thought they were closer to land than they really were.
Potentially, yes. Maybe he thought they were much closer to Santa Maria Island in the Azores. That discrepancy between the last log entry near the Azores and the discovery 400 miles east does suggest some kind of navigational confusion or miscalculation in those last 10 days. Now, you might ask, how could an experienced captain like Briggs make such a critical error?
Yeah, that seems unlikely.
Well, it might not have been just one thing. Remember the pump that was found disassembled? The theory is it might have gotten fouled, maybe by coal dust from a previous cargo. So it wasn't working properly to clear water from the hold, and that makeshift sounding rod found on deck suggests they were trying, maybe frantically, to measure the water level.
So maybe the pump wasn't working, they couldn't clear the normal amount of seawater coming in during rough weather, they used the sounding rod, perhaps misread it, or panicked at the reading.
Exactly. Combine that with rough seas, maybe a faulty chronometer, making him think land was nearby. Briggs could have mistakenly believed the ship was taking on water much faster than it was, that she was actually foundering.
And if he thought he saw land or was close to it,
He might have made the desperate call. Abandon ship now, try to reach safety in the lifeboat before the Mary Celeste goes down.
so that scenario paints a picture of a perfect storm of minor problems leading to a major misjudgment.
Precisely. Rough seas, a blocked pump, maybe a misread sounding, navigational error, all converging to create a perception of imminent danger.
Even if the ship itself wasn't actually about to sink.
Right. It highlights how perceived danger, based on faulty information or equipment, can be just as powerful a motivator as actual catastrophic damage. It's a very human explanation.
Okay, those seem like the most grounded theories. Now let's tackle the more sensational ones, the ones that really capture the imagination, but maybe don't hold as much water when you look at the facts. First up, mutiny. Came up early in Gibraltar.
It did. But as we've discussed, it really falls apart. Briggs's reputation as a fair captain makes widespread crew mutiny unlikely. More importantly, no signs of struggle or violence found. Personal effects mostly untouched.
And the clincher, the undrinkable denatured alcohol, rules out drunken mutiny completely.
Absolutely. That detail alone pretty much sinks the mutiny theory.
What about piracy? Pirates were still around then, weren't they?
They were in some areas, but again, the evidence just doesn't fit. The valuable cargo was left behind, personal belongings weren't stolen, there were no signs of violence or the kind of ransacking you'd expect from a pirate attack.
Pirates wouldn't just take the people and leave the valuable stuff.
Highly unlikely. Their main motive is plunder. The Mary Celeste just didn't look like it had been hit by pirates.
Okay, insurance fraud. This one seems persistent. Accusations against the Dia Gracia crew, even against Briggs himself.
Yes, but the official inquiry found zero evidence. And think about Briggs, respected family man, leaves his young son at home. Is he really going to abandon his wife and daughter at sea and risk everything for an insurance scheme? It seems incredibly improbable, character-wise. And there's a really important point of confusion here that keeps the fraud theory alive in the popular imagination.
What's that?
The Mary Celeste was actually involved in a later, completely separate insurance fraud attempt. In 1885, years after the mystery, a subsequent owner, a Captain G.C. Parker, deliberately tried to wreck the ship off Haiti to collect insurance money.
Seriously? The same ship?
The very same ship.
Right.
But his fraud was exposed, he was caught. This later confirmed scam is often mistakenly mixed up with the 1872 abandonment mystery.
So people hear Mary Celeste and insurance fraud and assume it relates to the original mystery.
Exactly. It creates this confusion, lending undeserved weight to the fraud theory for the 1872 event, even though there's no evidence for it back then. Separating those two distinct events is crucial. It shows how easily historical timelines can get blurred. Okay, moving on to natural phenomena. Could something from nature explain it? Possibly. Water spouts, those are like tornadoes over water or maybe a massive rogue wave. A sudden, powerful event like that could theoretically sweep people overboard or cause such intense fear of capsizing that they abandon ship.
Plausible.
It's plausible for some ship disappearances, but with the Mary Celeste, her mostly intact condition, relatively dry interiors and parts, no major structural damage, it doesn't perfectly align with the kind of devastation a massive rogue wave or direct hit from a large waterspout might cause. Maybe such an event could explain the lifeboat being lost after they abandoned ship for another reason, but it's less likely as the primary cause for leaving a sound vessel. Another natural theory is a seaquake, a submarine earthquake.
Are those common near the Azores?
Yes, it's a seismically active region. The idea is that a sudden jolt from a seaquake could have violently shifted the cargo, maybe cracked some of those alcohol barrels, causing a sudden massive release of fumes.
So the seaquake could be the trigger for the alcohol fume explosion scenario.
Exactly. It links a natural event to one of the most plausible abandonment hypotheses. It shows how different factors could potentially interact, the Earth itself providing the spark, maybe.
And then we get to the really out there stuff, the theories that show how much we dislike an unsolved mystery.
Right. The ones that demonstrate our tendency to fill the gaps with drama, sometimes logic be damned. Well, you hear things like a giant octopus or some unknown sea monster attacking the ship.
Seriously, a kraken.
Pretty much. Utterly inconsistent with the lack of ship damage or any physical evidence, of course. How does a giant squid take 10 people without leaving a trace or wrecking the rigging? It defies biology and logic.
The alien abduction.
That's a more modern one, naturally. Zero evidence beyond the ship was empty. Pure speculation.
Didn't someone suggest poisoned bread? Ergot fungus.
Yes, the ergot poisoning theory. The idea was the crew ate contaminated bread, hallucinated, and jumped overboard or abandoned ship in a delirium.
But that was disproven.
Completely. The Di Gracia crew reportedly ate provisions from the Mary Celeste after they found her and suffered no ill effects whatsoever. So, contaminated food is out.
What about Captain Briggs having a breakdown? Suicide.
That was actually proposed by one historian early on, but later retracted. There was absolutely no evidence, and it flew in the face of everything known about Briggs's stable religious character. Highly unlikely and quite defamatory.
And wasn't there some weird story about a swimming race?
Ah, yes. A purely fictional account suggesting they all got in the lifeboat to watch a swimming race, maybe between the captain and his mate, and then got swept away. It shows the lengths people went to invent any explanation. It really makes you wonder, why do these outlandish theories persist, even when we have plausible, logical explanations?
Yeah, why?
I think it's because we humans have a fundamental discomfort with unresolved questions, with mystery. We have this innate tendency to fill knowledge gaps, and often we fill them with dramatic, memorable, even supernatural stories, especially when the official investigation doesn't provide a neat, satisfying answer.
So the lack of a definitive case closed leaves the door open for anything.
Pretty much. These fantastical theories, while entertaining maybe, really highlight the fiction part of the Mary Celeste narrative. They underscore why critical thinking and sticking to the evidence are so important when looking back at history. The human mind often prefers a wild story to a complex, uncertain reality.
So the Mary Celeste isn't just this historical puzzle box. It's become this powerful cultural touchstone, hasn't it? Ingrained in our collective memory. And a huge part of that fame, maybe the biggest part, comes down to one very famous writer,
Arthur Conan Doyle.
the creator of Sherlock Holmes himself. His short story, J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement, published in Cornhill magazine in 1884. That's what really launched the Mary Celeste into superstardom, right?
Absolutely. It propelled the mystery into widespread public consciousness. But while it was a gripping story, Doyle took significant liberties. He introduced inaccuracies that have stuck around ever since, often overshadowing the actual facts.
Like what?
Well, famously, he changed the ship's name in the story to Marie Celeste. That spelling, M-A-R-I-E, is still incredibly common today, maybe even more common than the correct M-A-R-Y.
I've definitely seen Marie Celeste used a lot.
He also changed the voyager date to 1873. And his plot involved a revenge-seeking former enslaved person murdering the passengers. Pure fiction, obviously, crafted for dramatic effect, with zero basis in reality or the investigation.
And didn't Doyle also invent some of those iconic but false details, the ones that make it seem even spookier?
He did. That's where we likely get the enduring images of the half-eaten meal on the table or warm tea still in cups, implying this incredibly sudden mid-action disappearance.
But those weren't real. The De Gracia crew reported a wet, messy cabin, not an interrupted meal.
Exactly. Those vivid, memorable details are pure Doyle. But they became so iconic, so ingrained, that they're often repeated as fact, even now. It just shows the immense power of compelling storytelling to shape our memory of events, sometimes more than the dry facts themselves. It's really a prime example of how fiction, even with relatively minor factual tweaks like the name, can embed itself so deeply in public memory that it overshadows or distorts the actual history. Doyle's story demonstrates the power of narrative to create and perpetuate myths long before we had the internet amplifying things. The fictional Marie Celeste arguably became more famous, more influential than the real historical Mary Celeste. And Doyle's story was just the beginning, wasn't it? That Mary Celeste has inspired countless other stories, books, films.
Yeah, it keeps getting retold. Any notable examples?
Well, plenty. There was a 1935 film, The Mystery of the Mary Celeste, which was released in the U.S. as The Phantom Ship. Starred the horror legend Bela Lugosi. It had a completely fictional plot about a murderous sailor.
Playing up the horror angle.
Definitely. More recently, a 2020 film called Haunting of the Mary Celeste went full supernatural dimensional rifts, that kind of thing.
So mostly sticking to the sensational.
Often, yes, especially in fiction. But there have also been documentaries, like The True Story of the Mary Celeste from 2007, that try to ground the story, sift through the evidence, present the more plausible scientific theories, trying to correct the record for newer audiences. If you connect this continuous stream of adaptations to the bigger picture, it just shows the enduring power of an unsolved mystery. These retellings often reflect the anxieties or popular themes of their own time. They reinterpret the mystery through a contemporary lens, usually prioritizing drama over strict historical accuracy.
So the Mary Celeste becomes this kind of blank slate.
In a way, yes. A flexible archetype. People project different fears, different fascinations onto it. It allows the story to keep evolving, keep feeling relevant, even generations later. It speaks to our fundamental human need to solve puzzles, or maybe just to tell a really compelling story when the puzzle pieces are missing.
And what does this all mean for us today? The name Mary Celeste is basically shorthand for unexplained desertion, isn't it? It's the quintessential ghost ship.
It absolutely is. It's the archetype.
And why does it still captivate us so much?
I think because it touches on the limits of our understanding.
Yeah.
It confronts us with the unknown, the unexplained. It taps into that primal sense of mystery associated with the vastness and unpredictability of the sea.
You often hear it compared to other maritime mysteries, right?
Yeah.
Like the SS Cotopaxi and the Bermuda Triangle or the Carol A. Deering, that other ship found abandoned.
Exactly. It's the classic case against which others are often measured. Its legacy isn't just about the historical facts or even finding the single right answer. It's become this potent cultural symbol, a byword for the unexplained, representing our ongoing fascination with the mysteries the ocean still holds. The Mary Celeste keeps inspiring curiosity, storytelling, and reflection. So, to wrap things up, while we don't have that definitive smoking gun answer for the Mary Celeste's crew disappearance, the most compelling scientifically plausible theories all point towards a similar conclusion. A hasty abandonment triggered by a sudden perceived emergency. The main candidates remain that terrifying but non-damaging pressure wave explosion from the leaking alcohol fumes.
The cell experiment theory.
Right. Or Alternatively, a critical misjudgment of the ship's condition, thinking she was sinking due to a fouled pump and possible navigational errors. In either scenario, the most likely outcome is that the crew and family got into the lifeboat, probably tethered it to the ship initially.
And then the rope broke.
And the rope broke or was cut in rough seas, leaving them adrift in a small boat in the vast Atlantic. A tragic but unfortunately plausible end. The mystery endures, really, not because of ghosts or aliens or sea monsters, but because of crucial direct evidence the lifeboat and the people in it was lost forever to the ocean.
The final witnesses disappear.
Exactly. The case remains unsolved, primarily because those key pieces of the puzzle are permanently missing. And we also have to remember the limitations of communication and investigation back in the 1870s. Clues could have been missed, misinterpreted. But despite lacking that final resolution, our human desire for answers, combined with the sheer drama and mystery of the sea, ensures the Mary Celeste continues to haunt our imagination and history books.
You know, this whole deep dive into the Mary Celeste really serves as a powerful case study. It shows us just how easily sensational fiction, like Doyle's story, and maybe those initial flawed official interpretations, can get deeply embedded in our collective memory. They often end up obscuring the more nuanced, more plausible, factual explanations that emerge later. It's a stark reminder of how storytelling shapes our understanding of the past, whether you're hearing the tale for the first time or you thought you knew it inside out. So maybe the next time you hear a really compelling story, especially one that feels almost too neat or too strange to be true, it's worth pausing. Ask yourself, am I getting the grounded facts here, or am I just really captivated by a good ghost story? And it makes you wonder, what other historical ghosts are still out there, waiting for us to carefully separate the enduring facts from the truly fascinating fiction? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.